how long this takes. And we are live, I think. I'm going to give just the interwebs a second to... I'm going to wait. And okay, we are good. So, hey everyone, welcome to episode 16 of Cheerful Conversations. I'm your host, April Schluter of The Cheerful Mind, and I've got an awesome guest with me talking about an extremely important topic today called creating confidence. I will get into that a little bit more because we're going to be talking about it for like an hour, but I don't know where you're at in the world, but I feel like I am getting really antsy at the thought of winter approaching its head, right? I feel like it's starting to get cold. This is like the last warm day in Chicago, I think, for a while. And it's 75. I'm actually sweating right now in my office because I've had to change the heater to the air conditioner, to the heater to the air conditioner every other day. And it's definitely impacting my productivity. I feel kind of sluggish. I'm trying to fight through it, trying to stay focused. And it's just that time of year, right? Where, okay, you people in California, maybe you get nice weather all the time, or, oh no, it's 60 and it's cold. But in Chicago, we feel all the swings, and I love it. I love feeling the swings, but it's just that transition time. And we always experience transition. So I'm not really sure what the whole point of this message is, but other than to tell you that I am sweaty, but I am super, super excited to get this show on the road. So welcome to Cheerful Conversations. All right, let me just clear all of my videos and find everything. Welcome, everyone. Here is my host, Tami Chapek. Tami, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Awesome, awesome. So we have this amazing conversation coming up to talk about confidence. And when Tami presented some ideas on what we were going to talk about, hold on, it looks like my connection is unstable for some reason. When we were talking about what the concept was going to be for the show, I have been thinking a lot about this piece of confidence. And it's definitely rearing its head in my own personal growth. It's been something that I've known for a really long while, that it's kind of the basis of what my success will look like if I can have it, but then also trying to be mindful about not wanting to overdo it, right? You don't want to see people who are overconfident. And I think that that's something that I've always struggled with in terms of, you know, I think if somebody were ever to call me conceited or, you know, self-centered, that's like my biggest nightmare. So when we were talking about show ideas and topics and themes, this was perfect. And it was also one of the things that I realized when I finished writing my book, that all of the things that I was talking about, even though it was a book about work-life balance, was that I needed to have the confidence that I could create that. Otherwise, it just wouldn't happen. So we'll get there in just a second. But Tami, I wanted you to introduce yourself to everyone and tell everybody what your fabulous self is up to in the world.
Hi, everyone. And April, thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And especially the idea of confidence is something that I just focus so much energy on, both personally and professionally. So near and dear to my heart. Yeah. Just a quick background on me. I like to call myself a recovering advertising executive because I was in the game, playing the game, taking over the world, and I just wasn't happy. And I really did this whole discovery process about what am I passionate about? What makes my heart sing? What can I offer to the world? And now today I am a leadership and career coach, and love how much I can support other people on their journeys to really rise up, whether it's in next job, their own leadership style and voice, training a team of people and individuals. And I have a super big passion around women's leadership in particular. Mm-hmm. So a lot of energy and a lot of focus on supporting women in their plight, if you will, to kind of take those steps forward.
Yeah. And so coming from advertising and going into coaching, I know that there's always things that you can take from your prior experiences and apply them into coaching. And I had, an engineering background. So a lot of the work that I do has to do with, problem solving and trying to figure out how to actually design something and test things out and going through that engineering process. How does the advertising background bleed into your coaching?
Yeah, it's funny because when I first got into coaching, it was a total disconnect for me. Like these don't work together. What is this? I don't understand. And the more I've been doing it, the more I've been supporting people, the more they are like lockstep for me. And one of the things as a marketer that you do is you really try to dissect what is the unique difference about this product versus anything else out there. Like why would you want this over something else? Or what need is it solving for? And I kind of think the same goes through with helping people figure out what kind of leader they want to be, or how to get the next job, or how to position themselves on their resume or in their talk track or whatever. It's like what makes them special, what makes them unique, and really highlighting that and getting them really comfortable with that story. And doing it in a creative way and in a fun way so that they're not just like, hi, I'm Tami and I'm a coach, like, what? It's how boring, right? So as a marketer, I can really help them spin it in a way or get excited about it in a way that energy is then going to follow.
Yeah. And what I love about this too is that, you don't have to be your own business owner. You don't have to be you can be working in corporate or not corporate, or you can have that, but it's all about how you present yourself, and goes into our topic today, which is awesome too. But in some ways, we're always kind of marketing ourselves, right? When we're trying to make connections, whether it be in career, our love lives, our, making friends, we need to understand some of these things. So I just love it because there's so many different ways that you can take various business principles and apply them to life. And sometimes I don't think people see the connection, just like you were saying when you're first starting. How does that tie in? So
and a lot of people, I think a lot of people perceive marketing as a little icky. Like there's an icky factor to it because it's selling or you're spinning something. But at the end of the day, it's about highlighting what is really special about you or about the product, right? It's about bringing out what is really important and owning that and being authentic to that. And I love that idea of like really tapping into the depth of who you are and finding out how to bring that to life.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. And I love doing that as well. Awesome. So how did we meet? We met, when was that? Was that
October?
Summer? It was October. So it was like a year ago.
Yeah.
So she is
almost on the nose.
I know. It was like, she's one of our fellow IPEC, Institute for Professional Excellence in Coaching, IPEC Peeps. She did her second module of training in Chicago last year, and I was there volunteering. And it was super fun. But I remember that I was sick and I was stressed out about this program that I was trying to pilot that I made super complicated, which now is in year 2, which is awesome. But I remember that I was like, oh, I wish I could just be more of my energetic self. And I couldn't really do it because I was feeling so under the weather, blowing my nose, didn't want to touch anyone. It was bad, but it was still so great to meet all of you guys and just get a second dose of that training.
Yeah, which is funny because meeting you for the first time, I would have never known that you were not feeling well or that your energy was off. Like I thought you were really engaged, and I was very, like attracted to your energy, right? And I remember coming up to you afterwards, be like, "Tell me, what is your business like? How are you successful? What are you doing these days?" Like I really just wanted to learn more. So there was definitely something going on there that was good. So.
Sure. Yeah. And we're so close to each other, yet we haven't seen each other since then. So we should definitely grab like a meal or coffee or whatever.
Because so much more fun. Anytime.
But I'm glad that this kind of re-kickstarted that conversation and that we're able to do this today. Okay. So one of the other questions that I ask all of my co-hosts is, what is something that you geek out on? And this can't be something work related or just something that people would be like, oh yeah, that's obviously something Tami would be into. So what is this unique thing about you that you want to share?
Yeah, it's funny because I automatically want to go into like women's leadership, but that's what I do every day, right? Because I do totally geek out on that. But I will like turn it in a totally different direction. I totally get geeked out about hosting events. I love cooking for people, and I love taking care of people, and I love pouring people extra drinks. Don't ever come to my party if you don't want to walk away a little intoxicated. Like
yes.
I like to host.
Invite me to one of these parties.
Totally. There's just something about making people happy that I love in an event. And I love bringing people into my home and just engaging with people in that way. So, and trying new recipes. And yeah, I go way overboard with it.
Yeah. I love that. My mom is really like that. And I didn't somehow inherit that trait. I mean, I do like entertaining people, but I think I put a lot of pressure on myself to do a good job. And I'm usually the person at the party, no matter what, if I'm hosting or if I'm just attending, who's like, how can I clean up? Or how can I do this? But it's not the glorified stuff. It's like, let me just make sure that everybody else is comfortable, but it's silent helper. But throwing my own party, I love doing it, but I have to do it in spurts. So
yeah. I love it. And I love that's my way to mingle with everybody too. Like, what do you need? What can I get for you? How are you today? Tell me more. It's just fun.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. And then as usual, I don't know when I'm going to run out of these questions. So it'll be interesting where I shift to after how many episodes of doing this, but I have this fun vulnerability is sexy game. I'm all about vulnerability. This is a game from one of my dear friends here who made this game. And I'm going to ask you an icebreaker question. I'm not going to look at what it is, and we're both going to answer it. You ready?
Okay, here we go.
All right. Okay. I don't know if you can see this, but it is, what is a goal you set and felt utterly surprised that you achieved? What is
it's hard for me to disconnect from my work now. I feel like it's so much who I am. It's not I think in the past I defined my work as my job, and it was a thing that was exhausting to me. Now it just is who I am. So a really recent goal, I set a financial goal for myself for year one, and I've almost doubled it, which is amazing. And I'm just so psyched to just see, it's not about the money for me, but it's about knowing that I'm really making a difference and making an impact. So I've far surpassed, and I'm super psyched about it.
That's awesome. What is a goal that I set and felt utterly surprised that I achieved? I feel like I do this all the time, where it's just my nature to find a goal that I don't think I can achieve and then achieve it, right? And it started with becoming an entrepreneur and then writing a book and doing all this stuff. And I feel like there's this whole potential future career in media, whatever that looks like, that is going to either enhance or evolve my business. And I'm not even sure what that looks like, but I had been up until earlier this year kind of poo-pooing the idea. So it's one of those things that I feel like I'm always constantly doing. And, I've done so many different things, but I would say that the book was a huge one. It was okay, I just have to be determined and I can do it. But I never saw myself as somebody who would ever be a published author and all that. So that's, I'm surprised. Maybe people who know me are like, I'm not surprised, but it didn't seem like something that I would naturally be like, oh, when I want to grow up, I want to be an author. So that's mine.
Yeah. Love it.
Awesome. Okay. And then we also are going to share some positive news, because we know that the world is default negative sometimes, and we have to look for those golden nuggets of positivity in the world, in the media. It does exist, but it might take a little bit of time to find. So Tami, why don't you share your first story of positivity that you found?
Awesome. So it's funny, as I was looking for positive news, I was really, candidly, I was struggling, what's positive? And I had this big moment, and sorry if it's okay to share this, but where really anything can be positive or negative depending on the lens that we're looking at it through. So I found this really awesome article, but I could see how you could look at it with the sadness to it, but I think it's so positive and so amazing. So I'm going to share this one. It's called How Saying I Do Can Help Millions of Girls Say I Don't. And it's about this idea about prearranged marriages or child marriages, where kids in other countries are getting married at 12 and 13 years old and really being forced into marrying someone that they don't love, that they don't want to be with. And obviously a lot of it is cultural, but a lot of it is, to drive, population and just kind of acceptance of that. But it adds to our poverty levels. It adds to violence to women. It adds to health issues. I mean, there's a whole ramification, and especially about obviously education for women and their ability to do what it is that they want to do with their lives. So this group of I guess the wedding industry, I don't want to say group, got together and said, what can we do to change this? Like, what can we do to actually help support marriages that people want to be involved in? So they started this company or this organization called VOW. So all caps VOW. And it's basically like, have you heard of the Honey Fund? So when you get married, there's all these new companies out there now where you can kind of sign up to, instead of giving me a gift, you can donate dollars to my honeymoon or to a bigger ticket item that you want. So this group started the same thing, but it's so you can add a percentage of your total donation to this company that basically helps then feed it back into education in these other countries and ways to really start to break that dynamic of having these children get forced into marriages. And then the impact, the legs that has to change the dynamics of equality and violence towards women and just our global population and global poverty is significant. And when we think about marriages in America, it's like $100 billion industry. And if we can donate like 1% of that, like what that can do, how that can change the world around us. So I read that even though it's a sad cause necessarily, but you can make such an impact with such a tiny little change. So it's this vow group, and then you can do it as part of your registry. You can actually do it as centerpieces at your wedding where people can just chip in while they're there. I mean, just what an amazing way to like take a couple bucks out of your pocket and make a difference for some very young woman's life across the world.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, I totally agree with you. I was, we were talking about this before the show aired last week. Some of and even in previous episodes, there's been a lot of negative circumstances or sad circumstances, and it's really hard to avoid sometimes, but it's absolutely the lens that you look at it with. And are you going to just admit defeat, or are you just going to do that, or are you going to do something with it that can be impactful and can cheer other people up? And so, I mean, I think that that's huge, because we could look at probably some of these really negative stories and try to look for the positive in it. I think, I see a lot of, in my circles, I have a lot of people who are on opposite sides of the political spectrum. And I don't, I think I veer in one direction over the other, but I try to kind of keep the peace. But even if I don't agree, there's always going to be some sort of silver lining, or for anybody who, is like, if I'm like, this is my person, there's still going to be flaws. Like, we're not all perfect. And there's only so much that one person can do, but it's all kind of up to us to look at it from a more positive lens. And we have to choose to do that, because sometimes we just don't want to. And sometimes that conflict is more attractive because, people like drama, which, is unfortunate, but it's like, or maybe they like other people's drama, but they don't like it on their own. Right. I mean, like, why is the Kardashians so attractive to watch? Because it's like, they're crazy, but like that's how they gain attention, and they've got little snippets of like good stuff that they do, and then just a bunch of other stuff. And I very transparent, I watch the show, so I can't too much in it. I really appreciate how they just own it, and they don't have any shame around it, and they live the life that they want to live. So that's great. So, but anyways, I love that. Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to share my story. And so this is interesting. There is I came across this article, that is a restaurant in Minneapolis called All Square. It's, I don't know if it's, they sell like grilled cheese sandwiches and all, basically like sandwiches that are all square. And but what's really, really interesting, this restaurant just opened in September, and they are trying to give opportunities to people who have, served time and have criminal records, and giving them the opportunity to come back with a clean slate. Right. I mean, I think that, it's unfortunate when people do things that, are against the law and they have to serve time for it. But if they are, if they acknowledge and they, that they were wrong and they, try to come back into life, what usually tends to happen is there's that judgment against them. Like, oh, you made this mistake, so you're pretty much screwed for the rest of your life, which, of course we don't want to encourage people to like, make those mistakes and everything. But what I love about this restaurant is they're just giving them the opportunity to start over because they've done their time. And it's just really, really great to see that there are companies out there that'll do that or have that spin and, allowing people to have the opportunity to start over and live again. And of course, they've already done their time. They already did whatever they did and they can't take it back. But instead of allowing that to perpetuate for eternity, they're just giving these people a chance. So I thought that was really, really cool to just see people caring about those things.
Yeah, it's inspiring to be able to separate the past from who they are as a person today.
And in the article, they were talking about how the restaurant's board includes a CEO who was a 5-time felon, a community organizer who was born in prison and later served time, and successful businessman who was wrongly convicted. So, I mean, and there's so many people too, I'm sure that, based on the system, they could have done their time and maybe they were wrongly convicted, but, they weren't going to fight it and they were just going to deal with it. And so, yeah, I think that this is just a great thing to be mindful of.
Yeah. Nice.
Awesome. Positive news. All right. Shall we get into the meat?
Into the meat.
Let's do it. Okay. So we are talking confidence. And I was mentioning earlier at the start of the show that I've had this realization, and I don't know, this is just what my gut is telling me, but I almost feel like confidence is one of the, and if not the number one biggest ingredient for success. It's like, if you don't have it, then, how are you going to succeed? Right? Because people are drawn to that positive confidence, not the overconfidence, but just that sweet spot, wherever that is. And I was just doing a webinar last week where we did this riddle, and it was like, you need this in order to succeed, but too much of it, and it can, negatively impact you. I'm totally butchering it because it was like actually rhyming. I should have wrote it down. But the answer was like, what is this? And it's confidence. You need to have confidence in order to be successful. And it's one of those things that there's not really any like, here's how you get it, right? And so there's a lot of confusion or mystery around how do you get to that sweet spot. And I'm super excited to kind of talk about this. And I'm like, where do we start? Because there's just so much to do. So yeah, should we talk about okay, so let's talk about this. Cause then, I think that there are times where we have experienced this experience when we haven't been confident.
Oh yeah. I mean, and confidence, like you're saying, it's kind of like the core to all of our action or inaction. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think certainly as I think about even the coaching path that I've gone down, my early days, I was very, very much lacking confidence. What if I tell somebody the wrong thing, or what if I ask them the wrong question, or what if, and the beauty of it is there's no wrong answer, right? Like there's nothing that I can do wrong in this situation, but having that lack of confidence really holds you back, and it holds you from really, obviously living up to your fullest potential, but really engaging with people and having depth of relationship and success, like you were talking before. I mean, lacking confidence, it's an art, I guess, not a science, but it can really be detrimental to you as a person if you don't have it or don't try to actively find it.
Yeah. And I feel like what's really, really interesting, and, just because we're both coaches, and in this industry and know that this is a huge factor. Well, I don't necessarily see any clients coming to me and being like, I want to work on my confidence. It's never the first thing that they say they need or they want to work on. It's always like, I want to grow a business, or I want to find fulfillment in my life, or I want to, get promoted or whatever it is. It's always some sort of external action. But when you think about why they want that, it's because like, then I will feel successful. And
Yes.
it's so interesting because it's like, okay, sometimes what the actions need to be is like working on that confidence and working on trusting that. And so it's something that is just so hard because, you being like a marketer, you want to really connect with what people are wanting. But sometimes, you get through all of these, you doing all these things. Like you said that you were working a really like lucrative advertising job and you had all the money and that was great. And that's like something that everybody wants is more money. But you were not happy in that role. And so it's like, so something's still missing, and how do I find that? And where do I go? And where do you go from there? How do you find that fulfillment? And so there's just so many, it's just interesting to see that sometimes we look toward the external in order to be the vehicle to build the confidence.
Yeah. And it's funny because, as you think about confidence, I think it is a fairly complicated term, or it can be if we let it be, because it is a combination of your internal belief in yourself and some external validation and action and inaction. And there's a lot of like things that have to come together around confidence to really like make that real. And, I have actually had a couple clients come to me like, I really want to work on my confidence. And you're like, okay, but like, what's underneath that? Like, what is the thing that, what are you not confident about? And where is that coming from and why, and what's holding you back? And a lot of the times it's fear-based. There's something that they're afraid is going to happen if they do or they don't. But there's a lot of layers to that onion, if you will.
Oh my gosh, so many layers. So is there any time, I want to get a little vulnerable here, and I'll share some stuff on my end too, but is there any moment in your mind where you experienced something where you were like totally lacking confidence, and how did you kind of overcome that? Because I'm assuming that if you're sharing this, then you're over it, or it could be something that you're working on, whatever you want to do.
Yeah. It's funny because I have always had, I don't know what the right word to use is. I've always been super confident professionally, in advertising and coaching, as I got over that hump, like I just feel really confident in my skills and ability to deliver. Like, I know if I set my mind to something, there's really nothing that's going to stop me. And I know that, like, I feel very confident in that. I know that because I've proven it time and time again to myself. And certainly over the years, I've had to learn that. Right. But, on the personal side though, is probably where I lack the most confidence. And especially when it comes to dating, relationships, and, to be totally vulnerable about it, it's something that I constantly work on, because I think it's really easy for me to second guess myself or doubt myself around like what version of me am I bringing to the table. And first dates in particular are the hardest, I think, because there's that, you want to have confidence, you want to walk into it knowing how amazing you are and what a good catch you are. And, all the things that like, I like talk myself up to when I get into it. But at the end of the day, you're like exposing yourself for someone to say, yay, or nay, and it's hard. So that's an area where I think I'm constantly working on my confidence around it. And the older I get and the more in tune with myself that I get, the easier it becomes. But there are certainly moments where I have my doubts.
Yeah. I always feel like the relationship stuff is so difficult too, because I remember just the prior to really starting to date my husband, or, knowing him, I was always trying to people please. I'm like, what can I do to get you to like me? So I'm going to do this. Oh, you like soccer? Then I like soccer. Oh, you like music? Then I like music, or like rock music. Then I like that too. And I'm very much a chameleon in some senses. I have so many different interests that I can really like play around with this whole concept of, okay, if you like that, then I can find appreciation. And I always look for the good things in anything, whether or not it's my passion. And it was just interesting when I would see a lot of my prior relationships fail, because there was something that I wanted that they wouldn't conform to. And it was like the most frustrating thing. And I would always find myself trying to just conform to them. But then it became this thing that I'm not happy because now I'm not being me.
Right.
And my husband, he and I were best friends for the, 2 years prior to us dating. And I was dating somebody else at the time. So it was a completely platonic relationship to start. We were cheering in college together, but he saw like me at my best and at my worst, and would make fun of me and would do all these things, and not being able, I didn't have to impress him because I wasn't attracted to him at the time, right? He wasn't like my love interest. And by the time we got together, it was like, okay, well, you still want to be with me despite like me being this like crazy dramatic, like everything is a problem. Like I have to be, everything has to be perfect. And if it's not, then it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
You see me at my worst and you still want to be with me. This is weird, but I'm going to go with it. And so it's just so funny because I feel like I always tell people like the second that you let go and you kind of just trust yourself, and this kind of goes back to some of the stuff we were talking about before we went live, but it's like the second that you let go and you're not looking, it's like they just tend to like crop up. And then not to say like, okay, I'm not going to look and I'm going to just, wait for Mr. Right to come or whatever. It's like, you have to still get out there, but then it's how do you look at, these relationships and not get yourself in that place where you're trying to conform to something, or like having second guessing about, am I going to be good enough for this guy, or is this guy good enough for me? It's just like trying to be present. It's hard, easier said than done. But
and definitely over the years, I mean, it like I said, the more kind of in tune I am with myself and kind of owning that authenticity, the easier it is. And the more that it's just, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But it is an area that I can have ups and downs on for sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say in terms of, the things where I feel that I lack confidence, and this is just interesting because I feel pretty good about my relationship. I feel, good in that area, but I've always had a money confidence issue. It's, and I know that a lot of people struggle with that. And I think I've talked about this in other episodes earlier this year. I have this like really like weird way of like wanting to make money, and I have trouble asking for help on certain things because I just like want it to just people like come to me to coach. But it's like, I also feel like I want to make sure that you want it. And I think it's also partially because I've just been burned in the past where people, will try to have a conversation with me and they just go straight into selling mode. And that triggers me a lot. And so, when I was working a 9-to-5 job, I was pushing, like getting close to making 6 figures, but I never got there. And then I had to basically wipe the slate clean and start all over. And I'm like, okay, I just spent all this time like building up to the salary that was like so close. And now I'm going to be an entrepreneur, and I'm probably going to have to make some investments in myself. And I don't know how this is going to go. And then because of the nature of my health situations, I cannot do it under a lot of stress, or else I will lose my hair. And so having to try to be this overachiever that doesn't stress out is like the weirdest combination ever. And I have to train my entire body to just not get stressed out about anything, which is why this whole company that I've started is so important, because if we can just stop focusing on the negative stuff and focus on being cheerful, the stress won't be there to the degree that it is. And not to say it's going to go away completely, but it's one of those things where I'm about to start my 4th year. I'm not at that point where I'm like, I'm making it. I don't know. I have a 6-figure business, and I've had to, with my coach, work on this detachment from money. And it's just a lot of my upbringing is just like, okay, you need to, go to school, get a high paying job and make money, because that's what defines success. And so having to unwire that, and not to say that I'm in a bad financial situation, my household income and all that is very comfortable, very safe and all of that. But it's just that personal feeling of like, I want to be able to like prove that I can do this, but I also have to do it in a way where I'm not feeling pushy. I'm not, and I have to target. And so like slowly I'm making more and more money, but it never has felt like, okay, that's where I want to be. And I also like, I think maybe part of me is like that fear of success of, if I get there, then what's going to happen? Like that's going to be the one thing. Then there's going to be a new problem. And I don't know if I'm even ready for that problem yet. So it's like, I don't even know, but it's one of those things where, yeah, I'm making decent money. I would always love to make more. I think everybody would always love to make more, but there's that feeling of the 6-figure that I just want to be able to say that I did or that I accomplished in my lifetime. And, I think it's different in terms of, entrepreneur running business. If I had 100, like 6 figures in revenue, that would be great instead of like the gross take home salary or whatever. But it's something that I'm still striving to, and maybe it's still trying to figure out the lessons that need to be learned here and trying to detach from the outcome. The same thing with you in relationships. It's like, okay, how can I just trust that the right person or the right people who I'm going to work with are going to get me there, and what are the things that I can do? Because I can't just sit around and be like, okay, I'm a coach, just come pay me. I have to be proactive, and I have to take actual actions to make that happen. But I also can't force it. And how do I continue to have, or how do I grow confidence around that and trust that it'll happen at some point,
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because through both of our conversations, we connected this confidence challenge to something we're afraid of. For you talked about fear of success or fear of what's next, like having to take on something else, and also a little fear around the impact to your body of turning up that amplification. And I was, I connect mine in that situation, right, is fear of rejection and fear of someone like feeding into my gremlin around I'm not good enough. What if that happens? So that fear is really a big driver of that level of confidence that we have in these.
That darn fear. So a lot of it is, fear of something that we're either lacking, or that, something that is a belief that we have about ourselves, that we're not good enough, or that we're not capable, or the myriad of things. How do we, and this can kind of tap into the conversations that you have with your clients and the conversations I have with my clients around confidence. Because a lot of times I tell people, people will come to me and say, I just feel like I'm so wildly unproductive, and I know that I have it in me, but for some reason there's just something that's holding me back. And, I have this accountability framework of like, hey, you say this is what you're going to do and you're going to do it. And a lot of people in the past have said, okay, so I want, I have this goal and I want you to hold me accountable to doing it. I'm like, great, I will do that. But at the same time, I'm not here to like just drill sergeant you and be like, you need to do this, because I'm not going to be here forever. And, I'd hope that you wouldn't want to like just have me do that for you forever. But my goal is to give you the tools to have the confidence to know that like, I know how to motivate myself, because then if that's happened, then I've done my job. And maybe, it's a long-term game. Like the game, as you continue to progress, it just gets higher and higher. So you have to learn how to motivate yourself more and more. But it's this piece of confidence. And so how do we start practicing that, either with our clients or with ourselves, knowing that these are things we can clearly identify things that we're not confident about. But how do we, aside from like just continuing to take continuous action, how can we actually like have the confidence to do it, or to get where we want to go?
Yeah. And I like to work with my clients to really figure out what is the driver of the lack of confidence, or what is the block, like you were saying, the fear, what is the thing that's in front of us, and digging into what that is first, because you can always take action. People always talk about fake it till you make it, like just keep doing it and it gets easier. And there's some truth to that. Like sometimes you just kind of got to start doing it to figure it out. But if there's something underneath that's kind of continuing to linger and drag there, like that analysis is super important, and understanding what that is. And then it's the awareness of it. So once you figure it out, like fear of rejection, right? Okay, so what is the story I'm telling myself currently about what rejection is and what that means to me? And how can I reframe that, or how can I change that, or how can I soften it so maybe it's not quite so black and white, and work through some strategies around that to start to break it down a little bit. But really, in my opinion, the number one most important, like, first step to take is that identification. Like, what is it? Let's get the awareness at least, and then figure out what to do with it.
It always starts with awareness. Like that's always the first step for anything. It's like, you just gotta know that you're doing it, because if you don't, how are you going to make any change?
Yeah. And it's not an overnight switch. Like, you might become aware of, like, what's that underlying thing that's going on there. And that's it. That's a great first step, because then you can start to feel it, recognize it, see it in the moment, and maybe not take any action on it, but just start to acknowledge its presence. Like, it's here. Okay, now what? And then make decisions. And some people, the fear continues and they don't want to do anything with it. They're not ready to. They need to shift and think about something else and come back to it. But sometimes, you can take a couple baby steps, and sometimes a big leap. It's going to vary for everybody really on what to do with it. But understanding what it is first is numero uno.
Yeah. And then trying to dissect. And I was at this event last week. Was it last week? Yeah, last week actually. And the topic was around confidence. And I was, furiously taking notes to just kind of recall this during our conversation. But one of the things that kind of came up was, talking about the fears and really figuring out, I think the speakers that were there, they were saying, that the fear that they had, part of getting over that confidence is just kind of like jumping in and doing it. The thing that you're most afraid of is the thing that you need to do to gain confidence. Seems very scary because it's like, oh, I'm scared of heights, so I'm going to, jump into a deep pool or something like that, and that's scary. But then then you have the experience of, what are the fears that are going on in my head, and how do I conquer that? And that just made me think of a lot of times. So I did flying trapeze for like 4.5 years. And a lot of people that would take, one class, they would do it to conquer their fear of heights just a little bit, to just say, okay, I'm in this safe place. I'm in a harness. I'm going to feel that feeling of discomfort. But every time you push yourself to, through that discomfort, you come out with a little bit more new awareness of like, okay, well, so maybe it's not that scary, especially if I'm supported in some ways. So how do I make sure if I'm in those situations where I'm in a high place and I'm afraid of heights, what do I do? And you were talking about this whole like fear of rejection before. So one of the things, and I think I've talked about this in 2 of the last episodes, but what's becoming more apparent to me in my life journey right now is that I don't think that my practice, and just going back to the whole money insecurity or lack of confidence, is, there's, sometimes, it's super easy to sell a book, and it gets increasingly harder to sell things as the price increases, right? That's just the way it is, right? And people will buy. It's always easy to give stuff for free, but you don't want to do that, especially if you're a business owner. But I was starting to notice my own fear of rejection in a sale. Like I would find myself wanting to just deal with, or only just take in anybody who actually like came up to me and said, I really want to explore this coaching thing, because and because I knew that was going to be a potentially easy conversion. Right? Whereas if I was going to go ask somebody and I didn't really know if they even knew what coaching was, or if they had any interest in coaching, or what their perspective was of it. And not to say that I like just cold call anyone, I wouldn't do that, but I would almost, if the other person wasn't, at least like 75% of the way there, I just didn't even go for it, because it's like, well, I don't want to waste your time. I don't want to be salesy. I don't want to sell you. But then I'm also starting to realize that a lot of people don't know what coaching is. And so I'm making assumptions for them. Like, okay, maybe you don't think you need coaching, but I realized that like coaching, I've had a coach, the same coach for over 2 years. I've had coaches for that, went through intense coach training. I know the impact. I can see where I was 4 years ago and see the difference. And so it would be wrong of me to say that coaching doesn't change lives. And that I'm, I almost felt like, oh my gosh, I didn't want to become that salesy person. And so I've almost been, keeping this thing small because I'm just trying to wait for those people who really know what coaching is, for them to just pop up in my face and tell me that they want to work with me. And that's not the way to do it. And so I've been trying to figure out ways to be able to push through that rejection and say, okay, I need to have conversations with people, educate them on what coaching is. If they say no, do they know somebody, and just really trying to push myself through that. And if I don't do that, then I'm not giving my business a fair shot. And so that's what I know that I could do on my side of the street, which is not comfortable at all. I'm like, and there's been times where I'll joke around and I'll ask for things that I'm like, I don't think you're going to say yes, but I'll be like, I'm boldly asking for, I'm just throwing my hat and my name in the ring, just in case not really sure what you're going to say. And if you're going to say no, then I'm going to just graciously accept the rejection. But I feel like I need to go through one of those experiments where I like ask somebody to do something that's like out of my comfort zone, not like, hey, can you buy me this? But, something a little bit more serious and say, and create some rules. And that's part of what I'm thinking about for my 2019 plan is like, let me ask about things that I think that I might get rejected on and just see like what my score will be by the end. If I do one ask, like one bold ask a day, by the end of 2019, will I feel more confident about handling rejection, making money? Will I feel better in that?
Yeah.
Maybe. We'll see.
Well, there is something to be said, and I'm sure there's a study somewhere to support it, but like the more you do something, the easier it is to do it. And the more you do it, the less you're tied to the outcome too, because you've done it 100 times, half the time you get a yes, half the time you get a no, whatever the results are. But like the more you do it, the less it feels impactful to you versus when you do it one time, it's a mountain, right? Yeah. And if you do it 100 times or 365 times, then it's just like, oh, just one, it breaks it down and makes it feel a lot smaller, a little easier to swallow.
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't know. I mean, and when you go back to thinking about, your confidence in relationships and all of that stuff, what are some things that you're trying to do to kind of increase your confidence there, or kind of attack the fear that hides behind it?
Yeah. So a couple of things as I kind of dug into the why, what's kind of going on there. Part of it was self-image challenges. So I took some time off of dating to actually refocus on myself and to really think about my health and getting in shape, and not so much that because I wanted to be prettier, but I want to feel better about myself. So that was a huge part of it that I've been working on and will continue to work on. So that when I go out, I don't know, I just feel better. I feel better about me and what I'm bringing to the table. And then the other side of it, kind of what you were saying, is just doing it, and so, we're in a world of apps, dating apps, which are amazing and awful all at the same time.
I know. I was like, I totally missed that. I think I was on Match.com for like a very brief stint when it first came out, like the early 2000s. And then I've always been like a serial long-term dater. So I was like, oh, I see all this like Tinder and I'm like, I don't even know how those things work, but like, it's almost like, I just want to know what it's like, even though it's like, I don't, but it's, it's like, I just want to like the fly on the wall of like somebody just do those things and just like looking at people. I don't know. It's just a very interesting thing that I have no awareness around. And so,
well, we can compare notes. I can share stories if you'd like. But just trying to be more active on those, but also honestly, I really prefer organic relationships, both with friends and intimate relationships. So just trying to be more open to meeting people when I am out and about, and not getting in the hurried frenzy of, I got to do this 18 things before, like really making eye contact with people, smiling, saying hello, and just really being myself and taking down the pressure of what a first encounter is. Because that's really a lot of it, is that like I was saying earlier, that pressure of like, which Tami do I bring to the table today? Well, how about I just bring Tami to the table today and not worry about, you know, which side of the coin I'm going to look at. So, so kind of like, I guess it's a multi-strategy, but we're really trying to just feel more comfortable in my own skin and be more comfortable as myself.
I love that. All right. So I'm going to ask you this. So any future love interest sees this, they'll just know, but what are your top values? I always love asking this question to people. What are your top values?
Yeah, thank you. It's funny. Huge value on really like depth of relationship. And to me, that's conversation. Like to be able to have a really solid conversation where you're laughing, you're crying, you're sharing your soul, you know, like just really being able to connect in a way where there's that, the ability to go deep or not, the freedom to do so. So I think I have a I know I have a high value and respect. So like this shows up for me a lot with time commitments. So if I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to be there. And I kind of expect the same from other people as well.
For sure.
And then I think the third one I'd put high up at the top there is just having fun, you know, like we're in such a serious world and we're so busy and exhausted in all the things that we do every day. Like, let's just laugh and enjoy a fun moment or a fun activity or whatever it is. So.
Totally. I love this. I feel like I should be asking this of every co-host that I have on, because, you know, even with just yours, like mine are, you know, fun, authenticity, accomplishment, and connection. So we already have two of those three aligned, and, you know, without even knowing, I mean, we all have different values, but it's just interesting how without even having to speak the words, you know, those values tend to attach to each other subconsciously. And so I just think that that's great. And so those of you people out there who are watching,
I'll just send this portion of the clip out to any future prospects.
I know. You're like,
watch this section and you're good to go.
I know. Oh my gosh. You know what else is interesting? This is totally off topic, and then we'll start to wrap it up. Is so I've been taking this body language training course, and a lot of it is kind of how you apply the science of nonverbal communication to everything that you do so that you can present yourself more confidently and all this stuff. And I feel like I've just intuitively in my mind known either how to read people. I don't know exactly the science behind it. So that's the stuff that I'm trying to learn. And it's really, really tough, but it's just very interesting to see as I'm learning some of this stuff, it's really interesting to see how your body language impacts how people perceive you as confident. One of the latest things that I was noticing, they were talking about like power poses or just how you stand, and how they say that, you know, when your power poses are more like open and wide and you're standing with a lot of confidence, whereas like low power is, you know, very crouched down and how that makes such a difference. But one of the things that I was learning is that, you know, because we're in such a technology based society, everybody's, you know, walking and checking their phones and all that stuff, but just the practice of being on your phone is like a low power stance. And so when you're walking into meetings or when you're walking into a first date, like if you're doing that, you're already presenting yourself as a lower power pose, which is just crazy. And you don't want to be like, hey, you know, because it's like over the top, but you want to find that middle ground. And so it's just a little body language confidence, but it's just, you know, it's just interesting how I think that the confidence radiates out of the words that you say, out of the emotions that the nonverbals that you send, and it's all interconnected. And so, you know, having that conversation, you know, we were saying that some of this confidence starts with like kind of looking inward, and you know, that can be a very vague term, but really understanding what your fears are, where you're lacking confidence, just having that, you know, and acknowledging what those underlying things are so that you can kind of slowly attack them in whatever way that you choose to do. But as you get more confident, you start to see that present. You don't have to really try, but at the same time, you can use some of this nonverbal communication to almost do a feedback loop to help you feel more confident, which is why there's so many like conversations about doing power poses before presentations and all that stuff, because
And well, interesting side note on the body language aspect, because you're right, it's a huge part of translating your confidence. And again, kind of fake it till you make it a little bit, which power pose opens you up to like, okay, I've got this, get the energy in you. But like a little gender difference here. So like men naturally want to be bigger. They naturally want to take up more space, which gets into a little bit of that assumed confidence, whether they have it or not. Mm-hmm. And women naturally want to be smaller. We naturally want to make ourselves tiny and petite and little, and we cross our legs and we fold our arms and we like squeeze ourselves into these tiny little positions, which translates without even intentionally into lack of confidence or low power, like you were saying. So women have to find ways to open themselves up, still be who you are, right? Still be own yourself, but like be more bold in how much room you're taking up at the table. And, you don't need demand spread necessarily, but, you don't always have to like become this tiny little thing in the process, because it does, but people assume things based off of how you're standing or sitting.
Totally. And, it's so funny too, because I tend to slouch a lot, but like trying to speak with like my shoulders back and just open, I feel like I'm just like, like exposing myself like too much, which is just the weirdest thing. But I also know that when I think that I'm like overdoing it, it actually looks normal. So I'm like, okay, I have to deal with this. And I'm doing kickboxing now, which is also like very closed. And I'm like, I have to fight myself. So it's just, I don't know, that was a total side note, but it's funny how confidence does show in the way you present yourself. And it's very subconscious.
Yeah. But a lot of it is practicing. Like you were saying, like the more that you sit your back and project and whatever, the more natural it feels. But like at first it's like, wow, what am I doing?
Yeah, totally. Oh, okay. So we're down to our last 4 minutes or so. And so I wanted to, Tami, obviously, like, I'm so happy that we had this amazing conversation. And I hope that people will take a lot of wisdom and, from this conversation about confidence. It's all about it. It's just a matter of like, how do you really drill into it? And I like to close every show with or just in the last however many shows I've been doing this question that I have this huge pool of questions that people ask me all the time. And I'm just slowly chipping away and answering some of them throughout all my different mediums. And so one of them, and we can both respond to it, is this idea of productivity, which is not necessarily on the same vein of confidence, but I think that too, it can play a factor. But what would you say is the major thing that keeps you your most productive? So you can answer first and then I'll answer.
Yeah. So it's, I kind of don't know how to answer that. Like, is it a tool that I use or is it what drives me? Because I could answer that differently. I would say at the end of the day, like I was saying earlier, like I feel very confident in my abilities to put my mind to something. And so when I'm able to really focus my energy on whatever that thing is, then I get it done. And sometimes that means I have to break it down into little bite-sized chunks because it can be too much, too overwhelming. And so I wish I could turn my screen around and show you, but I have this giant whiteboard up here where I write every week, what are the things I have to do to keep me motivated and moving forward. I also religiously use my calendar as a tool to keep me productive and focused as well, because it's real easy as an entrepreneur to take a break in the middle of the day and take a nap or take the dog on an extra long walk.
I'm like, I don't feel like doing what I put today.
So I try to just set little deadlines for myself and stick to them as much as I can. So
yeah, amen. All of that. And, I have a very strenuous calendar or whatnot. I feel like when I was trying to think about how I would answer this question, I feel like it changes from time to time based on what I need, because there's so many different pieces of the productivity puzzle, right? Because you have to have the right motivation. You need to know that you're, whatever you're doing is something that you're focused on. And I think that a lot of times I'll do stuff that I know I need to do, but I won't be productive because I'm not passionate about it. So there's just so many ingredients. But I would almost say that the thing that I feel is keeping me most productive at this point in life is having stricter routines. I didn't, there's some times where you can't keep up the routine. Like every time I travel, it just throws me off. But even within the routine of travel, like knowing that I need a day to recuperate and, anything that I do the day before and after is just like, I need that buffer day.
Yeah.
But basically having a sort of structure to how I do anything that is in a repetitive state. And so this year I started doing a daily planner that I actually write things down. I have the electronic piece so that my clients can see my availability, but I take it and I kind of translate it into a paper form so that I can just basically just like physically write it down and check it off. And I do the same things every morning and the same things every night, but I still sit there and I write it all out. And I'm finally at the point, because I've been doing this new routine since the school year started, but I know it like intuitively now, okay, these are the 5 things I need to do in the morning, and these are the 4 things I need to do at night.
Yeah.
But because I have that, then everything else, because I've been able to set myself in some sort of routine that is also flexible, been able to, I just feel like I'm more productive. And, even when I'm just like, oh, today is not my day, I want to just go lay underneath my blanket and forget about everything that I was supposed to do today, I still have the list of like the 3 things that I absolutely have to get done today. And then if I feel tired, then everything just gets pushed, but it's not, it's still all in a organized situation. And so I can kind of get back into it whenever I do. So
yeah, I love that. Yeah.
So anyways, thank you so much, Tami, for being here. This hour went by so fast. It always does. But for all of you who are watching, thank you so much. And let us know, feel free to put it in the comments if, you have any aha moments and, any questions to share, and we'll get back to you. All the notes on how to get in contact with Tami will be in the show notes as well. And our next show is October 24th. And the theme, I'm finally getting into a routine where I know what we're talking about in the next show, is going to be this concept of accountability to your own success. So my lovely friend Gary Ware will be with me, and we're going to have some really awesome conversation. So we will talk to you then. And Tami, any final words for anybody?
No, thank you all so much. Really appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. See you guys next time.
Thanks.
Bye.